Welcome back, everyone, to my channel. We're continuing our journey through the greatest mythological epics of the world, exploring the timeless legends that shaped human history. And in today's episode, we venture into one of the most powerful and iconic tales ever told, the Iliad, the War of Troy. Across the sands of Mesopotamia and the tombs of Egypt, the age of gods and men had already taken shape. But in the lands where the sun kissed the Aegean Sea, a new legend was about to be born, one of heroes, vengeance, and destiny. This is the tale of the Iliad, the immortal epic of Greece, where mortals fought alongside gods, and the fate of kingdoms was written in blood and glory. It is the story of Achilles, the warrior of unmatched might, whose rage could shake the heavens, and of Troy, the golden city, whose walls would echo through eternity. Here begins the greatest war ever sung, a war of pride, love, betrayal, and the longing for immortality. This is the Iliad, the War of Troy. Chapter 1. The Rage of Achilles. The wind swept across the shores of the Aegean, carrying with it the scent of salt and smoke. Along the beaches before mighty Troy, 1,000 Greek ships lay moored, their black sails furled, their warriors restless beneath the dying sun. For 9 long years they had fought beneath the walls of the city, yet its golden towers still stood proud against the sky. The air was thick with anger. From the tents of the Achaeans, the sound of clashing voices rose like a storm. At the heart of the quarrel stood 2 of the mightiest men ever born, Achilles, son of the sea goddess Thetis, and Agamemnon, high king of the Greeks. Between them, pride had ignited a flame more dangerous than any spear. It began with a plague. The god Apollo, enraged by the arrogance of Agamemnon, had loosed his arrows upon the Greek camp. Men fell sick by the hundreds, their bodies burning with divine fever. The prophet Calchas, trembling before the assembly, revealed the truth. It is the will of Apollo. His priest, Chryses, came to ransom his daughter, and Agamemnon refused him. The god's wrath will not cease until she is returned. The king's face darkened. "Must I yield my prize to save the army?" he spat. "Very well, I will return her to her father. But I shall take Briseis, the captive of Achilles, to replace what I lose. Thus the balance shall be restored." A silence fell, heavy and dangerous. Achilles stepped forward, eyes blazing like fire reflected on bronze. His voice thundered through the ranks. "You who command by greed and not by valor, you dare take what I have won with my own hands. Without me, your armies would have perished on these shores. You feed on the strength of others, yet claim the glory for yourself." Agamemnon's reply was sharp as a spear point. "Do not forget who leads this host, Achilles. You may be a warrior, but I am your king. I will have Briseis, and you will obey." For a heartbeat, the earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Achilles' hand went to the hilt of his sword, but Athena, unseen by all but him, descended from Olympus in a shimmer of light. She seized his golden hair and whispered, "Hold your rage, son of Thetis. Do not strike the king. Speak your fury, but shed no blood. The gods are watching." Achilles froze, his chest heaving, every muscle trembling with restrained fury. He turned his gaze upon Agamemnon and spat upon the sand. "You are nothing without those who fight for you. I swear by my immortal mother, no longer shall I lift my spear for you. Let Troy burn your ships and slaughter your men. Then you will see how much you need Achilles." He tore the royal scepter from the ground, hurled it aside, and stalked away, toward the sea. Behind him, the camp fell silent, for all knew that the might of Greece had just been broken, not by Troy, but by the pride of its own sons. That night, the waves whispered of fate. Achilles sat alone beside the dark water, his armor cast aside, his eyes fixed upon the horizon. The sea shimmered, and from its depths rose Thetis, his divine mother, her face sorrowful yet radiant. "Why do you weep, my child?" she asked, her voice soft as foam. "Because," Achilles said bitterly, "I am wronged by men and mocked by fate. I came for glory, but my honor is stolen by a greedy king." Thetis touched his cheek. "Your time will come. But remember, destiny is a thread the gods have already spun. I will speak to Zeus, the father of gods, that he may grant you vengeance. Yet know this, your glory will burn bright and burn short." From the peaks of Olympus, Zeus watched the mortal world with eyes of storm and judgment. When Thetis knelt before him, her silver hair shining like moonlight, she pleaded, "Grant my son justice, O Thunderer. Let the Trojans prevail for a time, until the Achaeans learn what they have lost." Zeus pondered, then nodded with a rumble of thunder that shook the heavens. The threads of fate began to twist anew. At dawn, Agamemnon's men led away Briseis from the tent of Achilles. She looked back once, her eyes filled with sorrow, but Achilles said nothing. His rage was cold now, sharper, deeper, more dangerous than fire. "Go," he murmured. "You are but a shadow of what they have taken from me, my honor." Meanwhile, across the plain, the gates of Troy groaned open. From within rode Hector, Prince of Troy, clad in bronze that gleamed like dawn. The Trojans poured forth, banners snapping in the wind, their battle cries rising to the sky. The Greeks met them on the field, but without Achilles, their strength faltered. The clash of spears and shields echoed like thunder across the plain. Yet the gods themselves took sides. Apollo stood with Troy, Hera, and Athena with the Greeks. The heavens trembled with divided will. As the day bled into evening, Hector stood upon his chariot, gazing at the Greek lines. "The lion sleeps," he said, "but when it wakes, the world will burn." And upon the distant shore, Achilles watched from the shadows, the wind tugging at his hair, his eyes like the calm before a storm. "Let them fall," he whispered. "Let them all fall. When I return, the gods themselves will tremble." Thus began the wrath of Achilles, the rage that would shake Olympus, topple kings, and bring the golden walls of Troy to ruin. Chapter 2. The Duel of Paris. The dawn rose red over the plains of Troy, casting long shadows across the fields where warriors had fallen the day before. The air still smelled of blood and ash. Among the Trojan ranks, their Prince Paris, son of King Priam, stood tall in shining armor, his beauty untouched by the dust of war. Yet in his heart doubt stirred like a serpent. Behind him, Hector, his elder brother and the true bulwark of Troy, fixed him with eyes stern as stone. "Brother," Hector said, "you brought this war upon our gates. For the love of a woman, the sons of Troy now die beneath foreign spears. If you have any honor, face the man whose heart you have wronged, Menelaus, king of Sparta." Paris' pride flared for a moment, but he could not deny the truth. "Very well," he said, his voice trembling yet resolute. "Let the gods decide between us. If I fall, Helen shall return to the Greeks. If I triumph, their fleet shall depart and leave Troy in peace." Hector nodded grimly. "Then arm yourself, for this day will carve your name in bronze or dust." Word of the challenge spread swiftly through both armies. From the Greek lines came Menelaus, his armor battered but gleaming, his eyes burning with vengeance. The warriors gathered in a great circle upon the plain, and the wind hushed, as though even the gods leaned closer to watch. King Priam himself ascended the walls of Troy, his heart heavy. Beside him stood Helen, her face pale beneath the morning light. She gazed down at the two men who fought for her, one her husband, the other her captor, and in her heart guilt and sorrow battled like twin storms. "You weep," said Priam gently. "Do not fear, daughter. The gods play their games, and we mortals dance their tune." Below, Agamemnon raised his scepter and cried aloud, "Hear me, sons of Troy and Greece. Let this combat end our war. Whichever man falls, let his people yield the cause." The warriors murmured in agreement, their spears lowered. Then Priam prayed to Zeus, Father of gods, O Lord of thunder, judge this duel in truth. Protect the innocent, punish the oathbreaker, and guide the blade of justice. The two champions stepped forward. Menelaus hefted his spear, his face a mask of fury. Paris lifted his shield, its surface painted with the image of a white swan, the symbol of his beauty and his pride. A moment of stillness, then Menelaus roared and hurled his spear. It struck the bronze shield of Paris and splintered through, grazing his arm. Paris staggered back, clutching the wound, while Menelaus drew his sword and charged. Steel clashed against bronze. Sparks flew like fireflies in the sun. Paris struck back desperately, his blade singing through the air, but Menelaus' strength was the greater. With a furious cry, the Spartan king smashed his shield into Paris's chest and sent him sprawling upon the dust. Menelaus raised his sword high, the light of vengeance blazing in his eyes. "This is for Sparta," he shouted, and swung, but the blade shattered against Paris' helmet, a gift of the goddess Aphrodite. Before he could strike again, a golden mist enveloped the fallen prince. The goddess herself, unseen by mortal eyes, lifted Paris from the ground and carried him away in a breath of wind. When the dust cleared, the Trojans gasped. He was gone. Menelaus stood alone in the ring, his sword arm trembling, rage and disbelief consuming him. "Coward," he bellowed to the sky. "Have the gods themselves stooped to save you?" On Olympus, laughter rippled through the air. Aphrodite, radiant and cruel, laid Paris gently upon a couch in his chambers, where Helen waited. The goddess' voice was soft as honey, but sharp as venom. "Do not let fear consume you, my beloved. You are favored of the gods. Go to your wife and claim your prize." Paris stirred, his pride wounded, but his desire burning anew. "The world calls me coward," he said bitterly. Aphrodite smiled. "Let them. It is love, not honor, that rules men's hearts, and love is mine." When Helen saw him, her heart wavered between pity and contempt. "You should have died out there," she whispered. "Hector fights for duty. You fight for vanity. What god will save you next time?" Paris reached for her hand, his voice pleading. "Do not speak so, Helen. I would face any man, any god, for you." But her eyes said she no longer believed him. Meanwhile, on the plain below, the Greeks roared in fury. "The Trojans have broken faith," cried Agamemnon. "They steal their champion from the field. Let the truce be shattered. Let the war begin anew." And so it did. The two armies surged forward once more, their battle cries echoing to the heavens. Spears rained down like hail, shields splintered, chariots thundered through clouds of dust. The gods themselves took sides again, Athena guiding Greek spears, Apollo shielding Trojan hearts. High upon Olympus, Zeus watched the chaos unfold. He turned to Hera, whose eyes burned with hatred for Troy. You see how mortals twist even the will of the gods. Will you never tire of their wars, my queen? Hera's voice was cold as marble. Not while the seed of Paris still breathes. Let Troy pay for the insult done to me and to all Olympus. Thus the truce was broken. The hope of peace vanished beneath the clash of bronze. And amid the slaughter, men began to whisper a new fear, that Achilles still watched from afar, silent and wrathful, waiting for the moment to unleash his fury upon friend and foe alike. The sun set crimson over the battlefield, painting the sea with blood. The cries of the dying rose into the sky like prayers unanswered. And from the gates of Troy, Hector gazed upon the carnage with sorrow heavy as iron in his heart. Paris has doomed us all, he murmured. And yet I must fight to save what is already lost in the fading light. The gods smiled, for fate had only just begun to weave its cruelest pattern. Chapter 3. The walls of Troy. The sun rose pale and ghostly over the city of Troy. The echoes of battle still lingered in the air, a chorus of distant cries. The rattle of shields, the murmur of grief. Along the mighty walls that had defied 1,000 sieges, Hector, Prince of Troy, walked in silence. He ran his hand along the ancient stones, each one carved by the gods themselves, or so the old songs claimed. These were the walls that Poseidon and Apollo had built long ago when they walked among men, divine laborers in disguise. Punished by Zeus, when their task was done, King Laomedon had refused their payment. And so the sea god cursed Troy to fall beneath the wrath of Greece. And now the curse was beginning to unfold. Below the ramparts, the plain was strewn with the wreckage of the truce, broken chariots, fallen banners, blood drying in the dust. The Greeks had returned to the fight with a vengeance. Their camp, lit by the glow of morning fires, gleamed with bronze and fury. Hector's heart was heavy. He knew what must come. The gods gave us these walls, he murmured, but they will not save us if we have lost their favor. At his side walked Andromache, his beloved wife, holding their infant son, Asthionex. The child's laughter broke the solemn air, innocent and bright as the dawn. Hector smiled faintly, but sorrow flickered in his eyes. "My love," Andromache whispered, "every night I dream of fire. I see these walls crumble, and the Greeks pouring through. Must you fight every day, every dawn?" Hector turned to her, his voice steady but soft. "It is not courage that drives me, Andromache, it is duty. I fight because my heart will not let me watch Troy burn while I still draw breath. If I fall, let our son live to rebuild what is lost." Andromache clutched his arm, tears glimmering. "The gods are cruel to those who are noble. Then let them be cruel," Hector said, and kissed her brow. "For I will not yield." As he left her behind and descended the great stair toward the city gates, the horns of war began to sound again. The Greeks were advancing. Hector mounted his chariot, the horses stamping and snorting with restless fire. Around him, the Trojan warriors gathered: Aeneas, noble and calm, Glaucus, the Lycian prince, and a host of others whose names would soon be etched in both glory and death. From the Greek side came the thunder of feet and shields. Agamemnon led his men in gleaming armor, his eyes set upon the city's golden towers. Odysseus, ever cunning, murmured to him, "Even stone can fall when pride is its mortar." Agamemnon grinned grimly. "Then we shall bring them low with both." The clash erupted once more. Arrows screamed through the air, spears rang upon shields, and the field turned to chaos. The Trojans held the line beneath the shadow of their walls, and Hector was a storm among them, his spear flashing like lightning, his chariot tearing through the ranks of Greece. He met Ajax, the great bulwark of the Achaeans, face to face. Their spears clashed with the sound of thunder. Ajax's strength was that of a mountain, Hector's that of the wind that breaks it. Around them, men fell in heaps as gods watched from the clouds. "Yield, Trojan," bellowed Ajax. "The day is ours." But Hector only laughed, blood streaking his armor. "The day is never owned, Greek. It is merely borrowed." Their shields smashed together. Ajax's blow dented Hector's helmet, but Hector's counterstrike shattered his spear in two. Both staggered, breathless, and before either could strike again, the herald's horns blared, calling for truce by nightfall. Darkness came over the field like a veil. Both sides withdrew, dragging their dead back to camp. Fires burned across the plain like fallen stars, flickering against the walls of Troy. That night, Hector stood upon the ramparts once more, gazing at the sea where 1,000 Greek ships lay like shadows on black water. He thought of his father, King Priam, weary and wise, of Paris, lost in pleasure, of his people, who still believed that the walls would never fall. From the city's highest tower, Cassandra, the cursed prophetess, cried out to the night. "The sea bears doom, the stars bleed light. The horse shall come, the city shall burn, and the gods shall turn their faces away." The guards crossed themselves and whispered prayers, for none believed her words, none but Hector, whose heart tightened with dread. Meanwhile, upon Olympus, the gods quarreled. Hera demanded vengeance. Athena longed for glory. Apollo defended Troy, his golden lyre now a song of war. Zeus alone sat silent, his eyes heavy with fate. "So it begins," he said softly. "The threads are woven. Let them dance upon the loom." Far below, as Troy slept beneath its divine walls, Hector prayed quietly to the unseen sky. "Father Zeus, if my death must come, grant that it be worthy. Let my son remember me not as one who feared, but one who stood." And somewhere beyond the horizon, in the Greek camp, Achilles sat apart from all others, his armor gleaming coldly in the moonlight, his eyes reflecting the fire of the coming storm. He said nothing, he only waited, for the walls of Troy still stood, but the wrath of Achilles had not yet begun. Chapter 4: The Gathering Storm. Night lay heavy upon the plains of Troy. The fires of both armies flickered like dying stars, but none among men or gods found rest. For something vast and ancient stirred beneath the calm, a tension older than the world itself. The wrath of heroes and the pride of gods were about to converge. In the Greek camp, Agamemnon, son of Atreus and king of kings, sat brooding before the flame. His war had dragged on too long, 10 years of blood and dust, yet Troy still stood. Around him, the greatest warriors of Greece waited, their tempers as frayed as their armor. Odysseus, cunning as the sea, spoke first. "Great Agamemnon, our men grow weary. The gods favor no side for long. You must unite them, or we shall all fade into legend as fools." Agamemnon's eyes glinted with cold pride. "Unite them? They are united under my banner." At this, Diomedes, the fiery prince of Argos, struck his cup against the table. Your banner means nothing if Achilles refuses to fight. His tent is full of spoils, yet he sulks like a child. The name hung in the air like thunder. Achilles, the half-divine son of Thetis, born of prophecy, peerless among men. His absence was a wound in the heart of the Greek host. Agamemnon clenched his fist. Achilles forgets his place. No man, not even one sired by a goddess, commands me. From the shadows, Nestor, the wise old king, raised a hand. Pride against pride will break us, my lord. The gods delight in such folly. If you would see Troy fall, you must bend before you shatter. But Agamemnon did not bend. At dawn, he summoned Achilles to his tent. The warrior came clad not for war, but for confrontation, his golden hair loose upon his shoulders, his eyes like twin blades. Agamemnon rose. You have grown insolent, son of Peleus. You fight when it pleases you, and withdraw when it does not. I am king of men, and I will not be defied. Achilles met his gaze without fear. You are king of men, Agamemnon, but I am not a man for kings to command. I fight for honor, not for you, Agamemnon sneered. Then you will have no honor. I take your prize, the maiden Briseis, as recompense for your defiance. The silence that followed was sharper than any sword. Even the torches seemed to flicker backward, as if fearing the storm that was about to break. Achilles' voice dropped low and cold. You dare? Agamemnon's chin lifted. I am the lord of this army. Dare has no place in my words. Then came the roar, not of a man, but of something divine and terrible. Achilles' fury burned through the tent, and for a heartbeat, every warrior there felt the presence of something beyond mortal. He seized the hilt of his sword, but before he could draw it, Athena herself appeared, unseen by all but him. The goddess laid her hand upon his shoulder, her voice like wind over steel. Hold, Achilles, slay him not, for his death is not yet woven in fate. Endure, and your vengeance will echo longer than any mortal's life. Achilles trembled, his rage contained only by the will of a goddess. He sheathed his blade and spoke, his words heavy with venom. You have taken from me what is mine, Agamemnon. You have dishonored me before my men and before the gods. I will not fight for you again, not until the Greeks learn how much they depend upon me. He turned and strode out into the daylight, leaving silence in his wake. From that hour, the mightiest of the Greeks withdrew his hand from battle. When the news spread through the camp, despair followed. Without Achilles, the Greek line faltered. The Trojans, led by Hector, surged forward like the tide of the sea. Spears flashed, chariots roared, and the walls of Troy rang with songs of triumph. But among the gods, conflict deepened. On Mount Olympus, thunder rolled as Zeus called the council. You quarrel like mortals, he thundered, his voice shaking the heavens. Let none act without my will, or I shall cast them down. Hera, queen of the gods, rose, her eyes burning with pride. Would you let Troy stand, husband? They harbored the insult of Paris, who dared steal what was mine. Zeus frowned. You speak of Helen as though she were yours, to give or take. The folly was mortal, yet you would drown them all for it. Athena stepped forward, her spear gleaming with divine light. The Greeks are my children in wisdom and in war. Shall I let them perish? Zeus' gaze darkened. You shall do as I command. Today the Trojans shall rise. The Greeks must learn humility. Even heroes must bleed before they are reborn. And with a gesture of his hand, the fate of the day was sealed. As the sun sank, Hector led his army once more into the field. From his chariot, he saw the Greek ships burning in the distance, their smoke curling into the crimson sky. He felt neither triumph nor joy, only the weight of prophecy pressing upon his heart. In the Greek camp, Patroclus, dearest friend of Achilles, watched the flames with unease. He turned to his companion, who sat silent before the sea. "They will die without you," he said softly. "Your pride will kill them all." Achilles did not look up. "Let them die. They took from me my honor. Let them learn what it costs." But deep within him, something began to stir. Not rage this time, but grief, and a shadow of the fate he could not escape. Above the clouds, Thetis, his divine mother, wept in the halls of the sea. She saw what was to come, her son's glory and his doom. And as lightning broke over Troy, the gods smiled, for the storm they had sown now gathered strength, a storm that would shake the heavens and drown both pride and prophecy in blood. Chapter 5. The Rise of Hector. The sun blazed gold upon the plain of Troy, and the sound of war rose like thunder from the earth. The Greeks had faltered. Their hearts were weary, their spirits broken by the absence of Achilles. But the Trojans surged like a tide unchained. At their head rode Hector, Prince of Troy, his armor gleaming like the dawn, his spear cutting through the air like the wrath of the gods themselves. His horses, immortal, gifts of Apollo, tore through the battlefield as though driven by destiny. Behind him, the banners of Troy unfurled against the wind, red and gold, like the beating heart of the city. Aeneas, noble and steadfast, rode beside him. "You fight like fire itself, Hector. Even the Greeks flee before your shadow." But Hector's eyes, though fierce, held no joy. "They flee because Achilles does not stand among them. The Greeks are lions without their fang." But the gods turn their faces swiftly. "We must not mistake favor for fate." As they spoke, a spear hurtled from the Greek lines, striking the ground at Hector's feet. The Trojans roared in answer, and the plain erupted into chaos once more. From his high seat on Olympus, Zeus watched, the thunderbolt resting idle in his hand. He had promised Thetis, mother of Achilles, that her son's wrath would one day bring glory, but until that hour, he gave victory to Troy. He turned to Apollo, who stood radiant beside him. "Go now, archer, god, lend your strength to Hector. Let him drive the Greeks to their ships. The balance must be held until Achilles returns." Apollo bowed, his eyes bright with purpose. In a streak of golden light, he descended to the battlefield. He filled Hector's heart with divine fire. Strength coursed through the prince's limbs, his spirit lifted beyond mortal fear. He lifted his spear to the heavens and cried, "Trojans, the gods are with us. Today we cast the Greeks back into the sea." And the Trojans answered as one voice, their shout shaking the sky. They charged. Shields clashed, swords screamed, and the earth itself trembled beneath the storm of men. The Greek lines, leaderless and weary, began to crumble. Ajax the Great fought like a tower of bronze, holding the line with his shield, broad as a wall. He called to his comrades, "Stand fast, for the day we yield is the day we die." But even he could not hold forever. Hector's chariot broke through the ranks, his spear finding its mark again and again. The Greeks fell back toward their ships, their cries echoing to the waves. From his tent, Agamemnon watched in fury and fear. This is the price of Achilles' pride, he spat. Without him, even our bravest falter. Odysseus, his face shadowed by wisdom and weariness, replied, "Then swallow your own pride, my king. Beg him to return, or lose all." But Agamemnon's pride was a fortress higher than Troy's walls. Never. The gods will turn the tide in time. Outside, the gods had already chosen their side, and it was not his. At midday, Hector reached the Greek ramparts. His chariot thundered through the gates, and the defenders scattered before him. He hurled his spear, striking down Protesilaus, first of the Greeks to die upon Trojan soil. His fall was swift, his name eternal. Hector dismounted and raised his sword high. "Burn their ships. Let none escape the judgment of Troy." But even as his words rang out, a voice answered from the sky, not of thunder, but of reason. Apollo spoke through him, unseen yet mighty. "Glory is not yet yours, son of Priam. Let them taste fear, but not destruction. Fate waits for another hand to strike the final blow." Hector lowered his sword, the fire in him tempered by divine command. "Then I shall obey the gods," he said softly. "But I will not rest until Greece remembers this day." Night fell crimson over the plain. The Trojans returned to their city in triumph, the sound of their hymns rising to the heavens. Within the high walls of Troy, the people greeted their heroes with tears and song. King Priam, old and noble, embraced his son. "You have done what no man has done before, my son. You have driven the Greeks to their ships. Perhaps the curse of the sea gods has ended." But Hector shook his head. "No curse ends while pride endures theirs or ours." In the shadowed hall, Cassandra spoke again, her voice trembling with visions unseen. "I see smoke rising higher still. The ships will burn, yes, but so too shall the towers of Troy. The hand that saves us today will doom us tomorrow." Her words fell upon deaf ears. As always, Andromache met her husband at the threshold, her eyes bright with love and fear. "You have become the strength of Troy, my lord." Hector smiled gently. "Then may I never become its ruin." They walked together to the walls, where the city lights met the stars. Below, the plains glimmered with the embers of war. Above, the gods whispered. Athena, displeased, turned to Hera upon Olympus. "Shall we let Hector bask in glory while the Greeks cower?" Hera's eyes narrowed, not for long. "The fates weave for all men, even heroes." Poseidon, rising from the sea, spoke in thunder. "When the tide turns, it shall drown them all." Thus the gods conspired once more, even as mortals dreamed of peace. And in the darkened tent of the Greeks, Patroclus knelt beside Achilles. "Hector grows stronger each day. Will you still sit in silence?" Achilles' gaze was distant, his voice like ice. "Let him have his glory. The higher he climbs, the farther he will fall." Patroclus looked toward Troy, where fires burned like stars. "Then I fear that fall may cost us all." But Achilles did not answer, for within him, pride and destiny were waging their own war, a storm still gathering, waiting for the moment when the world itself would tremble. Chapter 6. The burning ship's dawn rose red over the plain of Troy, and the sea shone like blood beneath the rising sun. Smoke still drifted from the battlefield where the Greeks had fallen back in despair. From their ships came no songs, no war cries, only silence and the slow beating of waves against the shore. In the Greek camp, the men sat hollow-eyed beside the remnants of their pride. Armor dulled, spirits broken, They looked to their captains for hope that would not come. Agamemnon, king of men, stood before them, his golden breastplate stained with dust. "The gods have turned from us," he said bitterly. "Zeus himself has given victory to Troy. Perhaps we should sail home and leave this cursed shore." A murmur rippled through the host, a whisper of surrender. But Odysseus, ever cunning, stepped forward, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Home," he said. "To what end? To carry tales of our shame. The sons of Greece do not flee from fate. If the gods curse us, then we shall curse them back with glory." His words struck the men like sparks to dry tinder. They rose again, weary but proud, though deep in their hearts they felt the shadow of defeat. Meanwhile, within the towering walls of Troy, Hector stood upon the ramparts, gazing toward the sea. The city behind him sang of victory, flutes and drums, laughter and prayer. Yet his heart was heavy with the weight of foresight. Andromache joined him, her hands resting on the cold stone. "The gods have given you triumph, my love. Why do you stand apart from joy?" Hector sighed. "Because joy is brief in a world ruled by gods. I have seen too many victories turn to ash." From the courtyard below, Priam's voice echoed with pride as he blessed the warriors who returned from battle. But high above, Cassandra whispered her visions to the wind. "I see fire by the sea," she murmured, "ships burning beneath a storm of wrath, and a hero's shadow rising, cloaked in grief." No one listened. They never did. By midday, the Trojans gathered once more before the gates. Their armor gleamed in the sun, their hearts swollen with confidence. Hector raised his spear. "Today, we end this war. Let the Greeks see the wrath of Troy one last time." And from the heavens, Apollo descended unseen, wrapping him in divine brilliance. His chariot blazed like a comet as he led his army across the plain. The Greeks, seeing the dust rising in the distance, steeled themselves. Ajax the Great stood before the line, towering and unyielding. "They come again," he roared. "Then let them break upon our shields as waves upon the cliffs." The clash came like thunder. Spears shattered, swords sang, and blood mingled with the sand. The Trojans pressed hard, driving the Greeks back toward the shore. Step by step, they advanced until the masts of the ships loomed behind the retreating army. In the midst of battle, Hector's voice carried above the chaos. "Drive them to the sea, burn their ships, and let none return to plague Troy again." The Trojans obeyed. Torches were lifted high. Flames licked the air, wild and hungry. Soon the first ship caught fire, then another, then a dozen more. Smoke billowed black against the sky, and the cries of the Greeks turned from fury to terror. From afar, Nestor, the old and wise, called to Patroclus, who stood beside the silent tent of Achilles. "Go to him, child, go to Achilles. If he will not fight for glory, let him fight for the lives of his friends." Patroclus hesitated, torn between fear and love. He entered the tent, where Achilles sat, his eyes cold as stone, his armor untouched. "The ships burn," Patroclus said softly. "Our brothers die. Will you not rise?" Achilles did not look at him. "Let them burn. They stole my honor. Let them now taste ruin." Patroclus fell to his knees. "Honor means nothing if all of Greece lies in ashes. You swore to me once that your spear would defend your kin. Has that oath turned to dust as well?" For a moment, Achilles' eyes flickered with something deep, pain, pride, love. Then he stood, and the tent filled with silence. "Very well," he said at last. "If it is the lives of our men you would save, take my armor, lead them as if you were me. Perhaps the sight of Achilles will drive the Trojans back." Patroclus' heart leaped and trembled all at once. "You trust me with your name." Achilles nodded. "Only do not seek Hector. He is not yet yours to face." Patroclus clasped his hand, his voice breaking. "By the gods, I will bring them back." Outside, the ships burned like fallen suns. The Greeks, seeing the familiar gleam of Achilles' armor as Patroclus emerged, shouted in awe, "Achilles, Achilles has returned." The tide turned as if by miracle. The Trojans faltered, fear rippling through their ranks. Even Hector paused, his heart struck by disbelief. From the deck of a burning ship, Patroclus raised his spear and cried, "Drive them back, for Greece, for glory." He leaped into the fray, his movements swift, his courage divine. Behind him surged the Myrmidons, the chosen warriors of Achilles, their black armor flashing like a storm of blades. They struck the Trojans with fury unbound, and for the first time in many days, the Greeks roared as victors. But as the flames died from the ships, another fire kindled the fire of destiny. Patroclus, burning with triumph, forgot the warning. He pursued the fleeing Trojans beyond the ramparts, beyond the will of the gods. From Olympus, Zeus looked down and sighed. So it begins. The wheel of fate turns again. Apollo, watching from the shadows, whispered, "And it shall turn with blood." Night fell upon a field still smoldering. The ships were saved, but the cost was yet unseen. In his tent, Achilles waited, staring at the horizon where the fires glowed faintly like dying stars. "Return soon, my brother," he murmured. "Return before the gods claim what they have long desired." But far across the plain, the figure wearing his armor did not return. The winds of fate were shifting, and in their wake, death was already on the march. Chapter 7: The Death of Patroclus. The field still smoked from the burning ships, and the cries of battle echoed like ghosts upon the wind. The Greeks had turned the tide, or so they believed. From the dust and chaos rode a figure clad in the armor of Achilles, blazing like a fallen star. The Myrmidons followed him, shouting his name, and the Trojans fled before the wrath of one they thought was the son of Peleus himself. But it was not Achilles. It was Patroclus, the faithful friend, the borrowed hero. His heart burned with purpose. His arms ached with the weight of borrowed glory. He drove the Trojans before him as fire drives a herd of beasts, his spear flashing like a storm. Even Apollo, watching from the heights of Troy's walls, turned his gaze toward the mortal who dared wear the armor of a god's favorite. "Foolish boy," the god whispered, "you chase a shadow that belongs to fate alone." Hector stood amid his retreating men, his chariot wheels splattered with blood. He saw the golden armor gleaming across the field, and his spirit faltered. "Achilles," he breathed, "he returns." Terror rippled through the Trojans. They had tasted Achilles' fury before, and none wished to taste it again. But as Hector watched, something in the way that figure moved, the rhythm of his strikes, the tremor of his stance, told him the truth. "No," he murmured, "that is not Achilles. The gods play tricks today." Still, he raised his voice above the din. "Hold the line. Troy does not fall to ghosts." Patroclus, lost in the madness of victory, pressed forward. He drove the Trojans back through the gates, slaying the charioteer Cyprians, who fell like a broken bird beside Hector's horses. "Down you go, son of Priam," Patroclus shouted. "The sea will drink your pride." The men around him roared, believing they had already won. Yet even as they fought, Apollo descended from the clouds, unseen, his voice like thunder in the mortal's ear. "You go too far, Patroclus. You were meant to save the ships, not storm the city. Return, or meet your doom." But Patroclus, his blood aflame with the illusion of Achilles' strength, did not hear. He saw the gates of Troy before him, the same gates that no Greek had breached in 10 long years, and his heart surged. "One more blow," he said to himself. "One more blow, and this war is ended." He hurled his spear toward the gate, but Apollo struck him from behind with an unseen hand. The blow was not mortal, yet it sent a chill through his bones, and the light of divinity drained from his limbs. His vision blurred, his knees trembled, and his strength began to fade. "Step back, mortal," the god said coldly. "You are not Achilles." As Patroclus staggered, Euphorbus, a young Trojan warrior, darted forth and drove a spear into his side. The weapon bit deep, and Patroclus gasped, stumbling to one knee. Blood dripped from his lips as he turned, his eyes blazing with disbelief and fury. "A child's hand wounds me," he spat, wrenching the spear free. "Then let a man finish what the gods began." Hector's chariot thundered toward him. The prince of Troy leaped down, his armor gleaming like bronze fire. "So," Hector said, circling him, "the mighty Achilles sends another to die in his stead." Patroclus raised his shield, trembling but defiant. "You speak of Achilles. Then know this, I am his friend, his brother in all but blood. Strike me down, Hector, and you summon his wrath upon your house." Hector hesitated only for a heartbeat. "Then let him come, for I do not fear the sons of men." Their spears clashed. Patroclus struck first, but the point glanced off Hector's shield. His arms felt heavy, his body slowing under the curse of Apollo. Hector lunged in return, driving his spear beneath Patroclus' ribs. The bronze tore through flesh and air alike. The world went silent. Patroclus fell to his knees, his hands pressed against the wound. The armor of Achilles, shining moments ago, now lay darkened with blood. He looked up at Hector, his voice breaking like the tide. "You think you kill me, Hector, but it is not I you should fear. It is the one who comes after." Hector frowned. "You speak riddles, dying man." "No riddle," Patroclus whispered. "When my soul leaves this earth, the storm will follow. You will see him burning like the sun, and you will wish for death before he finds you." His head fell back. His final breath left his lips as a sigh, and the dust closed over him. For a long moment, the battlefield stilled. Even the wind held its breath. Hector stood over the fallen warrior, uncertain whether to feel triumph or dread. Then, with grim resolve, he stripped the armor from Patroclus's body. "If I wear the armor of Achilles," he said, "then his fear shall die with his friend." But high above, the gods stirred. Hera whispered to Zeus, "The thread is cut." And Zeus replied, "Another is now spun, the thread of vengeance." When the Myrmidons saw their leader fall, they cried out in horror. Menelaus and Ajax fought like lions to protect his body, driving back the Trojans who sought to desecrate it. The plain became a sea of fire and blood once more. Through the chaos, Hector mounted his chariot and rode toward the city, bearing the armor of Achilles as a trophy. Yet, as he crossed the field, the setting sun cast his shadow long and dark behind him, a shadow shaped like death itself. In the Greek camp, word reached the tent of Achilles. The moment was still. Only the crackle of fire and the hiss of the sea could be heard. Antilochus, son of Nestor, knelt before him, trembling. "He is gone, my lord. Patroclus is slain." For a heartbeat, Achilles did not move. Then his breath broke into a sound that was neither word nor cry, but something deeper, the sound of the world itself shattering. He fell to his knees, clutching at the sand, his body shaking. "No, not him, not my brother," the sea answered. Waves crashed against the shore, stirred by his grief. The wind howled, and even the gods turned their eyes away. From the depths, his mother Thetis rose, her hair of silver foam trailing in the dark water. "My son," she said softly, "I warned you of this day." Achilles looked up, tears of fury burning his eyes. "Then I will bring them all to ruin. Hector, Troy, the very gods who watched and did nothing. I will burn them to ash." Thetis touched his cheek. "You will have your vengeance, my child, but it will cost you your life." Achilles stood, his voice like thunder. "Then let it cost the world." Chapter 8. The wrath of Achilles' night fell heavy over the Greek camp. The sea whispered against the shore, mourning the dead. Smoke curled toward the heavens, carrying the scent of grief and salt. Within his tent, Achilles sat in darkness, his hands clasped around the blood-stained armor of his dearest friend. The fire before him crackled weakly, casting shadows across his face, the face of a god's son, now hollowed by loss. Thetis, the sea goddess, stood behind him, her eyes soft with sorrow. "The fates have spoken, my son. Your wrath shall bring glory, but it will also bring your end." Achilles did not look at her. His voice was low, trembling with the weight of his pain. "He was my heart, mother. I sent him to fight, wearing my name, and the gods watched him die." Thetis touched his shoulder. "Then let the gods watch again and tremble. I will bring you new armor, forged by the hands of Hephaestus himself." She vanished into the night, leaving Achilles alone with his rage. As dawn broke, the sky turned crimson, as if the heavens themselves had bled. The Myrmidons gathered before their tents, silent and grim. When Achilles emerged, they scarcely knew him. His grief had become something else, something vast, something terrible. The armor he now wore blazed like liquid fire, the gift of Hephaestus, forged in divine fury. Upon its surface, worlds seemed to turn, the sun and moon in eternal chase, oceans roaring, cities rising and falling in gold relief. Even the air trembled around him. He mounted his chariot, and Xanthos and Balius, his immortal horses, stamped upon the sand. The sea breeze hissed through their manes. One of them turned its head and spoke, for the gods had given it voice. "Master," said Xanthos, "we will bear you swift as the wind, but your death is near." Achilles smiled bitterly. "Then take me there faster." The horns of war sounded across the plain. The Trojans prepared once more for battle. Hector stood at their head, wearing the armor stripped from Patroclus, the armor that had once belonged to Achilles himself. The sun rose higher, glinting off the bronze. For a moment, the two warriors, each the pride of his people, faced one another across the field, as though all the world had narrowed to that single line of fate. When Achilles charged, the very earth seemed to split beneath his feet. His chariot tore through the ranks of Troy like a storm of iron. Spears shattered against his shield. Arrows hissed past him like falling rain. Nothing could halt his fury. He struck down Aeneas, Polydorus, and a dozen others whose names would be remembered only because they died by his hand. The Scamander River itself, choked with corpses, rose against him in protest. The river's voice roared like thunder. Enough, son of Peleus. You drown my waters in blood. Achilles turned, his eyes blazing. Then drink it all. He leaped into the current, and the river surged higher, waves like hands, reaching to drag him down. But Hephaestus, hearing his mother's cry, unleashed fire upon the waters. Steam rose to the heavens, and the gods themselves looked away from the carnage. By midday, the field belonged to Achilles. The Trojans fled behind their walls, their cries echoing like a dirge. Only Hector remained outside, standing firm before the Scion gate. From the ramparts, Priam cried out, "My son, return. No man born of woman can stand before Achilles." And Andromache, clutching her child, fell to her knees, begging, "Come back inside the walls, my love. You have done enough." But Hector's eyes never left the blazing figure racing toward him. "If I retreat now," he whispered, "Troy will call me coward. I would rather die in the light than live in shame." He turned to face his destiny. Achilles approached, silent, his spear in hand. Dust swirled around them. The noise of battle fell away, leaving only the heartbeat of the world. Hector spoke first. "We meet at last, son of Peleus. Too long have our fates circled one another." Achilles' reply was cold as iron. "You took from me what no god could give back. For that, there will be no mercy." Hector lifted his spear. "Then let the gods judge between us." They charged. The clash of their shields rang like thunder. Hector's spear struck first, but the divine armor turned it aside. Achilles' counterstrike shattered Hector's shield, his blow driving through the prince's breastplate, the very armor he once wore himself. Hector fell, gasping, the world fading around him. He reached up, blood upon his lips. "I see now, you truly are the storm the gods feared." Achilles stood over him, his face shadowed. "You should have listened when he warned you, the one you killed wearing my name." Hector smiled faintly, even as his strength left him. "Then grant me this. Return my body to my father. Let me not be left to rot beneath the sun." Achilles' eyes burned with hatred. "No, let the dogs have you as you had him." And with a final thrust, he ended Hector's life. The battlefield was silent. Even the wind seemed to halt. Achilles bound Hector's body to his chariot and dragged it through the dust, circling the walls of Troy as the Trojans wailed from above. Priam tore his robes in grief. Andromache collapsed beside the cradle of her child. And from Olympus, the gods watched, some in awe, some in horror. Zeus spoke at last. "Behold the heart of man, fiercer than fire, more pitiless than time. He has become the very weapon we forged." Apollo turned away, sorrow in his eyes. And when such wrath burns out, it leaves only ashes. That night, beneath a sky heavy with stars, Achilles sat beside the body of Patroclus. His hands, still stained with blood, trembled as he spoke. "I have avenged you, my brother. But why does my heart still ache? Why does victory taste like dust?" The armor of Hector lay beside him, torn and ruined. His vengeance was complete, yet he felt hollow, a man emptied by his own fury. The sea murmured softly beyond the camp, and the wind whispered of what was yet to come. For even now, far from the firelight, a king would dare the impossible, to walk alone into the enemy's tent and beg for his son's body. Chapter 9. The king and the slayer knight had fallen once more upon Troy. The fires of the Greek camp burned like a necklace of red stars along the shore. Within the city walls, grief hung thicker than smoke. Every house echoed with lamentation. Every mother whispered the name of her dead. But in the highest tower, Priam, king of Troy, sat in silence. His robes were torn, his crown cast aside. Before him lay an empty space where his son once stood. From the darkness came a voice, low and calm, like wind across marble. "You cannot sleep, old king." Priam lifted his head. Hermes, messenger of the gods, stood before him, radiant and young, the air shimmering around his feet. "You have grieved enough," Hermes said gently. "Now the gods command courage. Go to the camp of your enemy. Seek out Achilles. Beg for the body of Hector." Priam's eyes widened. "Go to the slayer of my son. Alone." Hermes smiled faintly. "Not alone. I will guide you through the shadows." And so, while Troy slept, Priam gathered treasures, robes of purple, cups of gold, jewels fit for the ransom of kings. But none of these glittering gifts could weigh against what he carried in his heart, the love of a father. Under the veil of night, a chariot rolled silently from the Sihon gate. The horses' hooves touched the earth without sound, guided by divine will. Hermes walked beside the old king, unseen by mortal eyes. They crossed the plain where so many had fallen. The moonlight revealed the ghosts of war, shattered spears, broken shields, and the faint shimmer of blood upon the dust. At last they reached the Greek camp. The sentinels slept, their torches guttering. Hermes waved his hand, and the gods' power clouded their sight. When they came to Achilles' tent, Hermes turned to Priam. "Here, mortal, I must leave you. What comes next belongs to your courage alone." Priam's hands trembled upon the reins. For a moment, the old man closed his eyes and saw his son as a child again, running through the gardens of Troy, laughing, fearless. Then he stepped down from the chariot and entered the lion's den. Inside, Achilles sat beside the body of Patroclus, still unburied, his armor glinting in the dim light. The tent was heavy with silence and smoke. Outside, Hector's body lay tied to the chariot, mutilated and dust-covered, the trophy of his vengeance. When Priam entered, Achilles looked up in disbelief. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly between them. Then the old king knelt, not as a ruler before his equal, but as a father before the man who killed his son. He clasped Achilles' hands, the same hands that had taken Hector's life. Tears streamed down his aged face. "Think of your own father, great Achilles," Priam whispered. "Think of Peleus, old and alone, longing for his son. I have done what no man should do. I have kissed the hands that slew my child." Achilles froze. The words struck deeper than any spear. In his mind, he saw Peleus, frail, waiting by the sea, dreaming of the son who would never return. He looked down at the king before him, the man who had lost everything, and suddenly, his rage crumbled. He reached out and raised Priam to his feet. "You are no longer my enemy," Achilles said softly. "You are a father, as mine is, and your grief is my own." For a long moment, the two wept together, warrior and king, slayer and father. The gods themselves looked down in wonder, for never before had such mercy bloomed upon the field of war. When Achilles spoke again, his voice was quiet, almost human. "He was brave, your Hector. None fought like him. He faced me when all others fled. He earned my respect and my sorrow." Priam bowed his head. "He fought for his city, as you fought for your honor. May the gods forgive us both." Achilles gestured toward the door. "Come, let us bring him home." Outside, the night air was cool, touched by the scent of salt and ash. The Myrmidons stirred in confusion as Achilles and Priam walked together, side by side, toward the body of Hector. When Priam saw his son, he fell to his knees once more, his cries breaking the silence of the camp. He gathered Hector's head in his trembling hands, pressing his forehead to the dust-streaked brow. "Oh, light of my life, defender of Troy, even in death you are beautiful." Achilles stood apart, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, he called his men. "Wash him, anoint him, wrap him in linen as if he were my own brother." And they obeyed. When they were done, Hector lay at peace, his wounds bound, his form serene, as though asleep. The night breeze stirred the tent flap, carrying away the scent of olive oil and myrrh. Achilles turned to Priam. "You shall have 12 days of peace. No Greek will raise a hand against Troy until your mourning is done. Then, and only then, will war return." Priam bowed deeply. "You honor the gods in showing mercy, son of Peleus." Achilles looked away, his voice distant. "The gods, or the memory of what I once was." He escorted the king to his chariot, and for a brief instant, their eyes met two men bound by the same chain of sorrow. "Go, old man," said Achilles. "Go and bury your son. While you mourn, I will remember mine, still living, yet already lost." As the chariot rolled away toward the sleeping city, the dawn began to rise over the sea, pale gold, washing the world in fragile light. In the Greek camp, Achilles returned to his tent. The sound of waves reached him through the stillness, whispering against the shore like distant memories. He looked toward the east, where the sun climbed higher, and for the first time since Patroclus's death, he felt something stir in his chest. Not peace, perhaps, but something close. He whispered to the morning, "Even kings must kneel, even slayers must weep. And in that, perhaps, the gods envy us." Chapter 10. The funeral of Hector. The gates of Troy opened before dawn. From the high towers, the watchmen saw the returning chariot of their king, rolling through the mists of morning. Behind it, the first rays of light touched the battered plains, and the dust rose gently around the silent figure lying upon the cart. The people gathered in the streets, their voices trembling between disbelief and grief. Mothers, wives, and children pressed their hands to their lips as they saw him, Hector, the protector of their city. Their son and shield, now motionless beneath a shroud of linen. A cry spread like thunder through the walls of Troy. "Hector, O Hector, the heart of our hope is gone." Priam's chariot entered the gates. The king's hands, weary from both journey and sorrow, still held the reins. His eyes, hollow yet steady, looked neither left nor right. Behind him walked the women of the royal house, Hecuba, the queen, Andromache, widow of Hector, and Cassandra, the seer, whose voice none had heeded. When they reached the palace courtyard, Priam spoke softly, as though to the wind. "Open the doors. Bring him to the house where he was born." The servants obeyed. They carried Hector's body through the marble halls that once rang with laughter and victory. Every step seemed to echo across the years, from his first breath as a child to his last as a warrior. They laid him upon a great bronze table, and the women washed his wounds. They poured oil of cedar upon his skin, combed his dark hair, and clothed him in white robes embroidered with gold thread. Upon his chest they placed the tokens of his life, his sword, his shield, a sprig of olive from the garden of his youth. When all was ready, Andromache came forth. Her face was pale as ivory, her eyes hollowed by nights without rest. She touched his cheek with trembling fingers. "You were my dawn," she whispered. "You were the wall that stood between me and despair. Now our son will grow without your arms, and I must teach him of a father he will never know." She lifted her gaze to the heavens. "O gods who sit above, if there is mercy in your hearts, grant me courage not to forget, but to live." Then she bent and pressed her lips to Hector's brow, as the city outside wailed his name. All that day, Troy mourned. The people gathered in the squares, each carrying flowers, water, or oil. Priests chanted hymns to Apollo, guardian of the city, whose temple now echoed with grief. From the towers to the riverbanks, the sound of lamentation filled the air like wind through hollow reeds. Even the gods looked down from Olympus in silence. Aphrodite wept for the beauty of mortal love. Zeus bowed his head, murmuring, "No song is so noble as the sorrow of men." Only Ares, god of war, turned away, for in Hector's death, even he had lost something divine. As evening came, the Trojans carried Hector through the city one final time. His body lay upon a great bier draped in scarlet cloth, and before it walked musicians with flutes and lyres. Behind them came the people, tens of thousands, moving as one river of grief. Priam led the procession, walking barefoot through the dust. He spoke not a word, for kings had no words left in the face of such loss. When they reached the plain before the Sion gate, they built a towering pyre of cedar and pine. The flames were meant not only to carry Hector's soul to the afterworld, but to cleanse the blood of war that still stained the earth. The priests began the chant, "Return to the earth, O noble son of Troy. Return to the sky, O breath of courage. Let the fire lift you. Let the smoke crown your memory." And with that, they lit the pyre. The flames rose high, painting the night gold and crimson. Sparks flew toward the heavens, like the souls of warriors carried upward by invisible wings. Andromache knelt beside the fire, her hair loose and wild. Hecuba tore her garments and cast dust upon her head. Cassandra sang, her voice sharp as prophecy. "The day will come when Troy shall burn as this pyre burns. But from her ashes, glory shall rise again." The people watched until the last ember dimmed. Then Priam gave the final command, "Gather his bones, place them in an urn of gold, and build for him a tomb beside the city's walls, where every dawn shall greet his spirit." So they did. They laid Hector to rest with honors no mortal had ever known. Upon the mound they placed his shield, dented, scarred, but still proud, and his helmet, shining faintly beneath the moonlight. When all was done, Priam stood alone beside the tomb. He whispered, "Sleep now, my son. Your name shall outlive the stones of this city." That night, the city slept in uneasy peace. The torches burned low, and for the first time in many days, no Greek shout broke the silence. Across the sea of tents, Achilles too sat in stillness, gazing toward the faint glow above Troy. He thought of his own death, near now and certain. He thought of Hector's courage and of the strange kinship that bound their fates together. "Perhaps," he murmured, "our souls will meet again, where no swords are drawn, and no fathers weep." The stars shimmered above the dark plain, and the gods turned their faces from the earth. For what followed would be written not in divine ink, but in the blood of men. And so ended the funeral of Hector, and with it, the last breath of Troy's hope. Chapter 11. The Death of Achilles. The wind from the Aegean carried whispers of prophecy across the plain of Troy. It had been 12 days since Hector's funeral, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The Greeks waited not for peace, but for the storm that must come after silence. In his tent, Achilles sat alone, polishing his armor. The bronze gleamed beneath the morning light, flawless as when Hephaestus had forged it in fire. Yet in that shining surface, Achilles saw not his reflection, but the face of Patroclus, smiling as in life and gone as in dream. Outside, the sea roared softly against the shore, as though calling him home. Suddenly, Odysseus entered, his eyes sharp and heavy with unspoken news. "The truce is over," he said. "Priam has buried his son. Now Agamemnon commands us to march." Achilles nodded, without a word. He rose, fastening the greaves to his legs, the breastplate to his chest. When he lifted his helmet, the plume caught the light, a river of red fire. "So it ends," he murmured. "Let the gods watch what they have written." The armies met once more before the Scion gate. From the walls of Troy, the people looked down and saw Achilles leading the charge, his armor blazing like a second sun. The Trojans trembled, for even in grief, his wrath had not faded. It had only grown quieter, colder, more absolute. The earth shook beneath the clash of shields. Spears whistled, horses screamed. And through it all, Achilles carved a path of ruin, seeking one man, Paris, Prince of Troy, whose arrow had once been promised a god's guidance. Far above, upon the heights of Mount Ida, the gods gathered. Zeus sat upon his throne, watching. Apollo, radiant and cruel, stood beside him. "Will you let him go on, Father?" Apollo asked. "He has defied us all. He slaughters, with no prayer, no offering." Zeus's eyes were sorrowful. "His fate is already written. Even the thunder of Olympus cannot change it." Apollo smiled faintly. "Then let me be the hand of fate." And with that, the god descended, swift as flame. On the battlefield, Achilles had driven the Trojans back to their walls. Each strike of his spear was thunder, each cry of his enemies, wind before the storm. He fought as though seeking death itself, and perhaps he was. At the base of the walls, he met Paris. The prince, fair and cunning, trembled as the shadow of Achilles fell upon him. "You, who stole another man's wife," Achilles roared, "have brought ruin to your blood and city. Stand and face your judgment." Paris's hand shook upon his bow. His heart burned with both fear and shame. But before Achilles could strike, a voice whispered behind the prince, soft like sunlight on marble. It was Apollo, unseen by mortal eyes. "Take aim," said the god, "and let my hand guide yours." Paris lifted the bow, his breath stilled. The string sang, the arrow flew. It was a single, slender shaft, nothing compared to the spears Achilles had shattered. But the gods had marked its flight. It struck true. The arrow pierced the heel of Achilles, that one spot untouched by the waters of the Styx, the one weakness in a man otherwise invincible. He staggered, his armor flashing like a falling star. The battle seemed to freeze. Even the Trojans held their breath as Achilles fell to one knee, then to the ground. The sound of bronze upon earth was like the closing of a tomb. Odysseus saw him fall and rushed forward. "Achilles," he cried. Achilles looked up, his eyes burning still with light, not pain. Blood seeped from his ankle, dark and slow, staining the dust. "It was a god's hand," he said quietly. "No man could strike me so." Ajax came beside him, lifting his shield against the rain of arrows. "Hold fast, my brother. We'll carry you to the ships." Achilles smiled faintly, his breath shallow. "Oh, this is where I belong, on the field, beneath the sky. Tell my father, tell Peleus, I did not die as a coward." He gripped Odysseus's arm. "And tell Agamemnon that no king commands death." Then his gaze softened. "Patroclus waits for me. I see him now, beyond the smoke." Odysseus's voice trembled. "You will be remembered forever." Achilles' eyes drifted toward the horizon, where the sun burned red through the haze of battle. "Forever is for the gods," he whispered. "But let my name echo a little while in the hearts of men." With that, Achilles, son of Peleus, breathed his last. A great silence fell. Even the waves seemed to halt. The Greeks, seeing their champion fallen, raised a cry that tore the heavens. Ajax stood guard over the body, felling any who dared approach. Odysseus knelt, closing the hero's eyes. "So ends the might of Greece," he said, "and so begins its memory." The Trojans dared not strike again, for even in death, the sight of Achilles filled them with awe and dread. Above, Apollo withdrew, his task complete, and Zeus, watching from Olympus, spoke softly to the wind. He was born of a goddess, yet more noble than gods, for he chose his fate and met it without fear. That night, the Greeks lit no fires. They carried Achilles' body to the shore, wrapped in the purple cloak Thetis had woven for him as a child. The sea whispered as if mourning its son. When dawn came, the horizon was streaked with gold and ash. Thetis rose from the waters, her face pale as moonlight. She knelt beside her son's body, her tears falling upon his brow. "You were my pride," she said, "and now you are my sorrow." She turned to the Greeks. "Build for him a pyre greater than that of kings. Let the flames reach the sky, so Olympus itself will see what men have lost." And so they did. Upon the shore, they built a tower of wood and gold, adorned with the arms of fallen warriors. They laid Achilles upon it, his armor beside him, his spear across his chest. When the fire was lit, the heavens glowed crimson. The gods watched in silence as smoke rose to the stars, carrying the soul of the greatest of mortals. When the flames died, the Greeks gathered his ashes and placed them beside those of Patroclus, bound together in one urn, for even in death they would not be parted. And thus ended the life of Achilles, the swiftest, the fiercest, the brightest flame of Greece. But legends do not die, they echo. And in the songs of poets and the whispers of waves, his name endures, a reminder that glory and sorrow are born of the same fire. Chapter 12. The Fall of Troy. The dawn that rose over Troy was quiet, too quiet. The sea lay still, reflecting a sky of molten gold. The Greeks had vanished. Their camps were empty, their ships gone from the horizon. Only the wind whispered among the ruins of the plain, carrying the scent of ashes and deceit. From the high towers, Cassandra, daughter of Priam, lifted her gaze to the silent shore. Her eyes, shadowed by visions no one believed, darkened with dread. "They have not left," she murmured. "They are waiting." But the people of Troy, weary of mourning, wanted to believe in peace. The endless war had carved too many graves. The promise of calm was too sweet to resist. Then came the cry, a shout from the gate, a gift. "The Greeks have left us a gift from the gods." The people poured into the square, their disbelief turning to wonder. There it stood, a colossal wooden horse, its flanks carved with runes, its head raised toward the heavens. No weapon could rival its beauty. Priam, aged and frail, looked upon it with reverence. "A tribute to Athena, perhaps," he he said, "a sign that the war is over." Cassandra tore her veil and screamed, "Fools, do not bring it within the walls. It carries death." But her voice was drowned by the joy of the crowd. Even the priests spoke of omens and blessings. And so, with ropes and wheels, the Trojans dragged the great horse into the city, beneath the very arch where Hector had once stood. That night, Troy feasted, wine flowed, the people danced. The torches burned bright upon marble walls that had known only tears. Helen, standing upon her balcony, watched the flickering shadows of the horse. A chill ran through her heart, though she could not say why. Below, Priam raised his cup to the gods. After 10 years, the dawn of peace returns to Troy. But above them, the stars turned coldly in their silence, and the gods looked away. When midnight came, the fires in the streets began to die. The songs faded, the city slept. Then a sound, a soft creaking of wood, a whisper in the dark. From within the horse, a panel opened, and Greek warriors emerged, clad in bronze, their faces hidden by shadow. At their head was Odysseus, eyes sharp as moonlight. They dropped silently to the ground. From the walls, they signaled to the sea. Far beyond the bay, ships that had been hiding in the fog unfurled their sails. The army of Greece had returned. The gates opened. The slaughter began. Troy awoke to screams. Flames leaped from rooftop to rooftop. The streets, once filled with songs, ran red with blood. Neoptolemus, son of Achilles, stormed the palace gates, his spear gleaming with vengeance. Ajax the Lesser dragged women from the temples. Menelaus sought Helen, blade in hand, while Odysseus cut his way through the chaos. The plan he had birthed now complete. In the palace, Priam clung to the altar of Zeus. The old king trembled as Neoptolemus approached, the son of the man who had slain his own. "I have lived too long," Priam said. "If the gods are just, strike me now." Neoptolemus's face was cold, his voice unshaken. "The gods are not just, they are only watching." And with a single blow, he struck the king down. Blood pooled upon the sacred stones. The last light of Troy's throne went out. Outside, Aeneas, prince of darkness, fought through the burning streets, carrying his aged father upon his back and his young son by the hand. He fled toward the northern gate. Behind him, the city roared like a dying beast. Temples fell, towers cracked. The statue of Athena shattered, its eyes burning with reflection of fire. As Aeneas reached the plain, he turned once more to see Troy, his home, his blood, his memory collapsing beneath a crown of flame. His father, Anchises, whispered, "Do not look back, my son. The gods have chosen you to carry what remains." And so, through the night, Aeneas led the survivors toward the mountains, the last heartbeat of a dying empire. By dawn, nothing remained of Troy but ash and echo. The rivers ran dark. The walls, once thought unbreakable, were smoke and shadow. Helen stood among the ruins, her hair silvered by ash. Menelaus found her there, sword raised. "For your beauty, 1,000 ships sailed. For your love, a city burned. What should I do with you now?" Helen looked up, her voice barely more than a breath. "Do as the gods have done, forgive or forget." Menelaus lowered his blade. He could not tell whether it was mercy or exhaustion. Far across the sky, Zeus watched as the last flames faded. Beside him, Athena turned away, her heart heavy. "So ends the age of heroes," she said, "and begins the age of men." Zeus nodded. They will tell these stories for 1,000 years, not as warnings, but as dreams. Below, the sea rolled gently against the shore, where the ashes of warriors mingled with the sand. From that place of ruin, new legends would rise. Aeneas to found a new city, Odysseus to wander the world, and the poets to weave the sorrow of Troy into songs that would outlast the stones themselves. As the sun rose over the blackened plain, a single dove flew from the ruins, its wings white against the smoke. And for a moment, just a moment, it seemed that the world, though broken, might begin again. And so, the golden city of Troy, the pride of mankind, burned beneath the wrath of gods and men. Yet from its ashes did not rise silence, but destiny. For every end births a new beginning, and every fallen hero leaves behind a story that refuses to die. Narration, tone, deep, solemn, yet inspiring. Thank you for watching the Iliad, the War of Troy, the fall of heroes, and the birth of legends. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to continue this journey through the greatest mythological epics of the world, because this story is far from over. Next time, we follow the last survivor of Troy, Aeneas, a man chosen by fate to carry the flame of a fallen world and to forge the beginnings of a new empire. Coming soon, the Aeneid, the journey to a new world.